Hi everyone, in this video I'll be going over Dr. Parikh's Qualtrics instruction sheet, which can be found in Canvas under Files, then Projects, and then Methods and Results. So in this video, I'll be giving you guys a visual of all of the features she highlights in this sheet, specifically the block, question formats, display tool, skip logic, and randomization tools. So to begin, once you log into Qualtrics, this is what your page will look like if you've never used it before, and you'll want to click Create Project in the center to begin. Once you click that, you'll be prompted to this page here, and you'll want to go under From Scratch and click Create Survey. Then you'll want to go to the right-hand side and click Get Started at the bottom. Once you click that, you'll be prompted to do the first step, which is naming your survey, and you'll want to give it a unique title so your group knows which survey is yours. So once you name it, you can go ahead and click Create Project, and it'll bring you to this page here. And just to give you guys a little bit of a rundown before we get into the specifics, here is your title. You can change it afterwards if you decide to do that. And this here is your block. You can add multiple blocks, as you can see with this Add Block button. And essentially, you can break up your survey by the consent form, then the actual survey questions, and then the end of the survey. And blocks are just kind of helpful to group everything together into sections. Then here you have your question. And like I said, it's within the block. And here you can insert your question, and then you can insert your answer choices. And here on the left, you'll see it has a plus sign above and under. And if you click the one below, it'll add a question under it. And if you click the one above, it'll add a question above it. And then to delete questions, you can just click this red minus sign here. And to add a question to your block, you can just go to the right and click Add Question, and you'll be prompted to choose the question format you would like. Now, to edit a question, you can click the question box and then go to the left under the Edit Question tab. Here again, you can edit the type of question you want to use. You can edit the answer type, the number of choices, the format, and here under response requirements, you can also add a requirement to make people force answer. That way you can just force people to answer the question and not leave a blank, but that entirely depends on the type of survey you're having. And then under that, you have the question behavior, which, like I previously mentioned, is where the display logic and skip logic can be found, and other question behavior tabs. All the way to the left, you have here your builder, which is where we're in now. You have your survey flow, your look and feel, survey options, photos, and translations. You really won't mess with much on this side except here in the builder and maybe in the survey flow if it's applicable to your survey. Okay, so to begin, we're going to start by inputting the consent form, which is what everyone should have in the beginning of their survey. So I'm just going to rename my block consent. And like I said, you can title the blocks anything you would like, but it most likely makes sense to put a descriptive title that describes what's going inside this block. So then in the question, I'll go ahead and copy and paste directly from Dr. Parikh's consent no compensation document. As you can see, everything's kind of jumbled up and it's really hard to read because there's no subheadings like you can find in the consent no compensation document. So to edit this text, you can go up here and click Rich Content Editor, and it'll bring you to this page here. So here, as you can see, you can change the format, the font, and the size, as well as bold, italicize, and underline text. And I'm just going to break up this section how Dr. Parikh has it in the original document, which is putting space in between each section and then bolding each section as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be back when I finished everything. Okay, everyone, so I finished editing this section, and like I said, I just broke it up into the subheadings that are already established in the original document, and I just bolded the title of each subheading. And for the most part, you'll want to leave this section alone as is, except for these two parts here that I've highlighted. For the first part, how many people will take part in this study? Dr. Parikh leaves a blank insert statement just so you can put in the amount of people you either expect to take your survey or that you want to take your survey, as well as the location they're in when they take the survey. So for this, I just put approximately 20 people at UNC Chapel Hill will take part in this study. The next part you likely want to change is the time required. So in the original document, Dr. Parikh has that it'll take less than 45 minutes, but you're more than welcome to change this to the time it might take to take your survey. I highly recommend putting a shorter time if that's more realistic for your survey, because I tend to see a lot of students click off when they see that it'll take less than 45 minutes because they think it'll take really long and they just don't really have time to take a 45-minute survey. Okay, once you have all this in and have changed what you want to change in those two sections, you can just click off and it'll automatically save everything. You don't have to save your edits manually. And then you'll want to scroll down to the bottom, and here's where you can change your answer choices. As you can see, sometimes Qualtrics auto-populates answer choices, but you can go ahead and remove that to the left in the Edit Question tab. Just go down to Use Suggested Choices and turn that off. And after that, for this, I just only want two answer choices. You either consent or you don't. So I'm going to reduce it to two and go ahead and type in my answer choices. And like I said, for the consent form, maybe I want people to respond. I don't want anyone to click ahead without responding to the consent form. So I can go down to response requirements, add a requirement, and force a response. And then you know you force the response when you scroll up to your question and you see this little asterisk here, and the little pop-up says this question has response requirements. And now we can go ahead and go over the skip logic briefly. So let's say someone clicks, no, I do not consent. We don't want them to go through the whole survey because even if they answer it, we won't be able to use their data and it'll just be a little bit of a waste of time. So maybe we want people who click, no, I do not consent to be immediately taken out of the survey. To do this, you want to scroll all the way down to the Edit Question tab and click Skip Logic. Once you click that, this little tab will pop up and you'll want to leave it on the end of survey if no, I do not consent is selected. Then you hit confirm and it applies it to the question. You can scroll up and see the whole skip logic tab here. And you can edit it if you would like, but this is what I want mine to do, so I'm just going to leave it. Okay, so now that's the end of the consent form section. And what I want to do now is probably add a page break. So a page break is important because this breaks up your survey into different sections where people can just click an arrow to go to the next section and they just won't be able to scroll through the whole thing. So with Qualtrics, if you don't add a page break, it'll automatically put everything on one scrollable page. So people won't have to answer the consent form before seeing the whole survey because they'll just be able to scroll through it. So to add a page break, you'll want to go to the top of the question, go to the right-hand side and click these three dots, and then click Add Page Break. And then once you scroll down here, you'll see the page break inserted. And what this will do is, like I said, add an arrow to the right-hand side. So instead of scrolling through every single question, people will just be able to move on to the next section that way. So now that you've added a page break, you'll probably want to add a new block here. I'm just going to go ahead and click Add Block. And you'll most likely want demographics for a lot of your surveys. So I'm just going to go ahead and focus this block on demographics and rename it that. So in this block, I'm going to go over the different types of question formats just so you know everything that's available to you. The first one we're going to go over is a text entry. And like I said, the text entry just is when you want to give participants an open-ended response option. So for this, I'm going to use it to ask users to insert their age. And here in the edit question, you can change the type of text you want. So for age, I just require one line. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to single line, and it'll just change it to something shorter so people don't type a lot in here. So again, you can add a response requirement if you would like to, but I'm just going to leave it as is. The next question we're going to go over again is multiple choice. And I'm just going to use this question to gather gender details. Like I said, Qualtrics adds auto-populated answers sometimes, and you can choose to turn it off or on, but I'm just going to leave it because this seems like a good amount of answer choices for this section. Now I'm going to go over another multiple choice question, but we're going to go over the other feature and show you guys how to use that. So for this section, I'll ask people to choose which race or ethnicity they best identify with. So here, once you have put other, you may want to let individuals input what the other means or what other they identify as. So you can go to the right and click this drop down arrow and click allow text entry. And this will auto-populate a little box where you can insert their own answer. And for demographics, this is all we're going to go over here for the types of multiple choice format. So we've gone over text entry, multiple choice, and then how to use the other feature in multiple choice. And like I said, after each section, you want to add a page break and you want to go to the last question of each block. So you don't want to go up to the first question and add a page break because otherwise it'll go in between here, age, and then gender. So we want to go down to the last question in my block, click the three dots, and click add page break. So now that we've added a page break, we want to go ahead and add a new block. And for mine, I'm going to go ahead and start inputting my survey questions. So I'm going to name my block survey questions and start inputting the different types of questions I want people to answer. Here, I'm going to go over a few more question formats that I didn't cover in the demographics section. And in the demographics section, we've covered multiple choice questions and text entry. Other options you have for question formats are text and graphic, which is right here. And this format allows you to enter text on the page without any response options and allows you to insert an image into the survey. So if you have directions or images you want to input before you ask people questions, this is where you would put that. Next, you also have a matrix table, and this is more efficient if you want to organize your items in a way that they all have the same response scale. So this is useful for things like the Rosenberg self-esteem scale. As you might know, all of the questions range from strongly agree to strongly disagree. So that way you don't have to keep retyping all of the question answers and you can just put everything the same. Next, you also have the slider, which you can use bars, sliders, or stars, which you can change on the edit question to the left. And then others are the form field, rank order, and side by side. For this block, to show you guys the different types of questions, I just have a random survey sample that I've created. It probably won't make any sense and won't be an actual study question you can use, but I just wanted to show you guys the different types of question formats. Okay, guys, so I went ahead and put these two multiple choice questions in. And if you have any questions on how I did this, you can just rewind the video a little bit and go back to the demographics section. And something I want to point out for the first question, where I have a range in multiple choice, is you want to be careful with how you input your ranges. So, what I see in a lot of surveys is that people will do like 6 to 7 and then 7 to 9. And this gets a little confusing for people who, let's say, got 7 hours of sleep last night, because then they don't know if they should choose 6 to 7 or 7 to 9. So you just want to be careful a little bit when you have the ranges in multiple choice. And then for the second question, I just use the other feature again, which if you have a question on how to use that, again, just click the other, go down to the right-hand arrow and click allow text entry. So the next question format we're going to go over is the slider. So you're going to go to the right and click add new question and click slider. And then as you can see, this allows people to slide the amount that they want to choose here. And these to the left are called statements. And then these at the top are called scale points. So in the Edit Question tab to the left, you can see here that you can change the slider type to sliders, bars, and then stars. I'm just going to keep mine as sliders, but you can change stores to anything you like. And you can also change the number of statements here. So you can reduce them and add them as well. And you can also change the min and max of your scale points and also decrease and increase the number of increments. So for my question, I'm going to ask people how stressed do they feel right now? And for this question, I only want one statement because I just want to gauge their stress level. So I'm going to reduce it to one and go ahead and type in stress levels. And I also only want my scale points in increments of 25. So I'm going to go ahead and decrease the scale points. Okay, and now people can go ahead and choose whether they're not stressed at all, maybe they're feeling 50% stress, or they're the most stressed in their lives. And as you can see here to the left, you can have a custom start position. So let's say you don't want the scale point to start at 0, and maybe you want to start it at the 50% mark. You can go ahead and turn on that custom start position here, and it'll start it at 50 for everyone in the survey. Just gonna go ahead and turn that off for mine because I don't need it and just leave it at 0. Okay, the next question we're gonna go over is a matrix table. So we're gonna click Add New Question and click Matrix Table. And as you can see, it looks a little bit similar to the slider format, except instead of bars, slider, stars, you have the multiple choice points. And it's very similar. To the left, you have your statements, and at the top, you have your scale points. So again, you can reduce or increase the number of statements, and you can do the same for the number of scale points. You can also change the format and the answer type, and as well as the matrix table type. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a random question here. And as well as insert my answer choices. And as you can see, as I've mentioned a little bit, sometimes Qualtrics auto-populates answers, and you can go ahead and turn them off here where it says use suggested scale points because it, just auto-populates from always to never. For mine, I'm just going to leave it because those are like fine for my question. But if you don't like the auto-population, you can always turn it off and change it yourself. Okay, so these are all the question formats I'll be going over in this video. If you want to know how to use the form field, rank order, and side by side, I highly recommend checking out the Qualtrics website, but I think these types of question formats will be the most useful for your surveys.